So today we're going to learn how to make a basic platformer in Scratch. Basically what a platformer is it's what's going to let you in a game mimic gravity, jumping, that kind of stuff. So in a game like Mario Bros or stuff like that, they all use platformers to basically emulate the laws of physics and such. So I'm going to show you how to make a very, very basic platformer. Feel free to copy this as I go along. I'm going to try and go a little quickly, so if you need to slow down the video or something or talk about it in your guys' classes, that's totally good too. And we're just going to get into this a little bit. So if you guys really want to create a game where the people interact, then this is going to be that kind of thing that you can do for that. So we're going to go ahead and go to Scratch, and then we're going to hit the create button. So this is really good for someone who's looking for making their own kind of game, adding their own twist to it, and they want it to be a little bit more intensive than like a very basic like ping pong game or something like that. Okay, so we are going to only use two different sprites for this. The first is going to be whatever our cat sprite or whatever our main character is, and then the next thing we're going to do is add a sprite. And I'm just going to search a line here and grab the line. So this line is going to be our ground, and I'm just going to put the line, I'm going to drag the line and put it down here kind of where the ground is. And then I'm going to put our cat on top of the line just to emulate what it would be like. So the next thing that we need to do is make sure that the cat knows when to go up and when to go down. And if you remember in the last class, we kind of talked a little bit about variables and what variables are, but I don't think we really use them in our programs. So today we're going to actually use them in our program. So I'm going to go over here to my variables, which is the orange button, and I'm going to click that, and I'm going to actually create two different types of variables. So I'm going to click this button here that says make variable, and the first one that I am going to do is called gravity. And I'm going to put this for all sprites. So we're going to hit OK. Perfect. And then the second one that I'm going to do is called X velocity. And this is straight out of what Scratch suggests to do. So it's called X velocity. And I will explain what both of those mean in just a second. So basically, both of these are going to be two variables that help us determine where the cat needs to move and how the cat interacts. And we're going to see how this works from the very beginning. So we're going to go to make sure that you have the cat sprite clicked, not your line. And we are actually going to do one more thing before I do that. My bad. So we're going to click the line, and then you're going to take line and name it ground, just so that we know that that's the ground. We're going to hit our first sprite, our hero, main character, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to go to our events and start with what we always start with, which is when the green flag is clicked. We're going to go to our variables and then say set gravity to, and then we're going to set that gravity to -5. So what is this going to do? Well, that variable is always going to be at -5, which means that if we ever ask our sprite to move in the direction of gravity, especially in the direction Y of gravity, it's always going to move down. So in this way, we've kind of mimicked what gravity is. So here's when this gets a little complicated, but it's not too bad, and everyone should be able to handle it. So we're going to start with a forever loop, and just bear with me here, and we're going to go through everything that we're talking about. So we're going to grab a forever loop, put it right underneath the gravity, and the first thing that we're going to grab after that is an if-else statement, which is also in the loops, and this is, as we said, it's one of the loops that we talked about. So if this happens, then I will do this. Otherwise, I'm going to do this. So if I put a sensor here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a sensor, and I'm going to have if the key space bar is clicked, and I'm going to put that in here. But instead of space bar, I am going to put the left arrow. So I just want to emulate. So if I click the left arrow on my game, I probably want the cat to move backwards. So in order to do that, we're actually going to say if that arrow is clicked, we're going to set the X velocity to -4. So I'm going to take the set button, and I'm going to put it right here, and then we're going to say X velocity to -4. Pretty basic. And then in the else statement, we're going to grab the set as well. Oh wait, my bad. So in the else statement, we're going to put another if-else loop. So the reason for that is we have to think about all of the different scenarios. So if the left button is pressed, then I want us to move backwards. So we're going to go -4. And if the right button is pressed, I want us to go forward. But if nothing is pressed, I want nothing to happen. I don't want the cat to move at all. So in order to do that, we have to actually put 3 different situations, and that's why I'm going to grab another if-else statement. So I'm going to take this if-else statement and put it in between here. And then I'm going to grab the sensing and say if key pressed, and then make it the right arrow key. So if my right arrow is pressed, then I'm going to go to my variables, and we're going to say set to 4. Super simple. And we're going to say set x velocity. So we're setting the x velocity during this whole thing. Else, we're going to set the x velocity to 0 because we don't want it to move. So that should be pretty simple. I'm going to take a really quick break here to make sure that everyone kind of can pause if they need a second to look at this and make sure that they're doing what they need to do to get here. Cool, so pause here if you have any issues or you just want to catch up with the code. And then after that, we are going to grab an if statement. We're going to grab another if statement, and we're going to say if we do something here, then we want y to change by gravity, else we want it to change by x velocity. So at what point would we want the cat to be going down, or at what point would we want gravity to be acting? Well, that would be when the cat is not touching the ground. Just like in real life, if we're touching the ground, then we don't really feel gravity acting on us. If we are jumping up, then we can feel us falling down because gravity is acting on us. So we want to do the exact same thing. So what I just said is, if it's not touching the ground, then we want it to make sure that gravity is happening on the cat. And if it is, then we're going to make sure that if it is happening, then we want to make sure that the thing is changing by x. So this is basically what we're going to do. So we're going to grab the not operator. We're going to go to the operators and say not. Like I said, if it's not touching the ground. So we're going to say not, and then within not, we're going to grab the sensing, and we're going to say if it's not touching the ground. So how we would do that is we would just go to touching, and instead of mouse pointer, we're going to change that to ground. Pretty basic. And then after that, we are going to go to the motion, and we're going to say change y by. And so if it's not touching the ground, we want gravity to happen. So we're going to say change y by. And then instead of changing y by 10, we're going to go to variables, and we're going to change y by gravity. If gravity isn't acting on it, then that's totally fine. That's good. That means that we only want it to change by x. So if it's touching the ground, then we are going to change x by. So we're going to say change x by. And then we're going to go to variables, and we are going to change x by x velocity. There we go. Alright, so this is, let's just take a look at what this is doing so far. So we're just going to hit this green flag, and so far this is what we've got. So it's just going to go like that. Oh, my bad. We're going to say in here, we're going to put that at 0. There we go. So now if we put the cap back and we hit go, then if everyone tries to hit their right arrow, it should go forward. If it hits the left arrow, it should be going backwards, and so on and so forth. Pretty basic, and this is one step to the platformer. So now I'm going to teach you the second step, and then everything after this should be pretty simple, and you should be able to kind of add your own features if you want. So I'm going to stop there. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is try and make the cat jump. So I'm going to do this one super quickly, and your instructor can explain any of the steps to you if you're a little lost or whatever it may be. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go to the events when this guy is clicked, and then we're gonna say control, put in forever, if, within that, and we're gonna say if key spaced, but instead it's gonna be up, because if we're hitting up we want it to jump. Then we are going to change y by 100, not 10, so that we can really see the jump. And you can change however much you want it to jump by, of course. And then we are going to go inside control, and then within repeat until, we're going to put that in here as well. And then we're going to say sensing, and we're going to say if it's touching, if it's key, oh wait, yes, we're going to say touching, and then within that, if we say ground, that's perfect. And then if it is touching the ground, it's going to stop going down. So our cat is basically going to stop going down the minute it touches the ground, otherwise it's going to go into the earth, which is not good. If it does touch the ground, then we're going to change y by -5. Okay, perfect. So let's just see really quick what that does. It's okay if you're not understanding all of this, you can ask your instructors at any time. So here we go, and this is how we're going to go back and forth, and then to jump we can just hit the up button, which is good. And then if we want to jump while we're going forward, we can just hit the right button and the up button at the same time. So now this is one example of how you would make a platformer. I think the next challenge for you guys would then be, now knowing what you know about sensing, how could we add another sprite and then code it so that if our main character, if this cat touched that obstacle, it would start from the very beginning. So I'm going to leave that one up to you guys, but this is a very basic example of how to do a platformer, and I'm just going to do a quick overview of the code, that way everyone knows what they're doing here. So we said when it's clicked, we created two variables. One was called gravity, the other was called x velocity. We set gravity to -5. We said forever, if the left arrow is pressed, then we're going to set x velocity to -4. Otherwise, if the right arrow is pressed, then we're going to set it to +4. Otherwise, we're going to set it to 0. It's not going to move anywhere. If it's not touching the ground, then we're going to change y by gravity, so we're going to make sure that it's coming down. If it is touching the ground, then we're going to change it by x to make sure that it's going right or left. Now, this is for the jumping part. When that's clicked, if it is pressing the up arrow, then we're going to change y by 100. And then as soon as we change y by 100, it's going to start falling. It's going to start coming down, and we're going to repeat that until it's touching the ground. So we're going to repeat it going down by -5 till it's touching the ground. So this is how to make a platformer. Super brief, I hope. If you have any questions, feel free to ask your instructor. Okay, thank you guys so much.